We'll get started with our Board of Regents Committee meetings. Members, remember we're being streamed live, so you'll need to turn on your microphones like I didn't just now. There's a button right there on these new mics, and speak directly into the microphone so our virtual audience can hear you. First up, we have the Legislative Committee. Regent Perez, please call your committee to order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the Legislative Committee to order. Mr. Berger, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Regent Perez?
Here.
Regent Sterling?
Here.
Regent David?
Here.
Regent Levy? Here. Regent May? Regent McDonald?
Here.
Regent Jackson?
Here.
LCTCS representative? LSU representative? Dr. Tarver? Here. Dr. Clark? Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Matt. We're now going to move over to item number 3, the executive budget overview, and I can sincerely say that we are very excited to talk about this today.
As am I. We have good news to report for the second consecutive year. The governor's executive budget has a large increase for higher education. This year, when we include the state general fund that will be put into funds, we have the largest increase in higher education since 2008, so we're very proud of where we're going. The overall increase is $111 million. This includes $75 million in state general fund and $35 million in statutory dedications. For state general fund, we have $31.7 million for faculty pay to get us to the SREB average, $19 million for our specialized institutions, which include the med schools, the ag centers, Pennington, and Southern Law. Mandated costs, so this is the cost for retirement, group benefits, legislative auditor, risk management, and those type of payments. $15 million for our funding formula. $15 million for Go Grants. This will be the largest increase since the program was created. Last year, we got to say this was the largest increase since the program was created, but we get to say it again. So this will bring us to over $55 million. It'll be $55 million that we will have for Go Grants. So we've almost doubled the program in 2 years based on this. And $5 million for Title IX offices. So this will be for additional staff at each institution as the system sees fit, and for additional resources for the campuses. Going into the statutory dedicated funds, there's $20 million that'll be put into the Higher Ed Initiatives Fund for Reboot 2.0, which was a federal program using stimulus dollars that LCTCS, Southern Shreveport, and LSU Eunice used last year to retrain about 6,000 students, so we hope to have that again. And then $10 million for broadband training. This will align to the Gumbo program that the division and the Office of Broadband is using to expand broadband in the state. $10.5 million for the Foster Scholars Program. This was the law that was created last year to create an adult scholarship program for adults to attend a 2-year institution with a scholarship. And then finally, $5 million to be deposited into the Higher Ed Initiatives Fund for innovation needs. So this will be for Regents. We received 4.2 last year, and we've been able to dedicate that to different things as they come up. Accreditation needs for institutions, dual enrollment, the Cancer Center in New Orleans. So it's kind of like a rapid response fund for Regents. So that's the quick overview for the executive budget. Next month, the Finance Committee will approve the preliminary allocation of this, and so this is just a report for your information.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Fellow Regents, are there any questions? No questions? Okay, we will move on. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 4, the 2022 legislative priorities overview. We're going to hear from Commissioner Reed on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delighted to speak about the legislative session, which is right around the corner. First off, in terms of our legislative agenda, as Matthew has mentioned, strategic reinvestment in higher education. So We have a proposed executive budget that looks fantastic. It is a cradle-to-career budget in terms of education, but we have to get that budget over the finish line. So we will be working hard to seek approval for that budget and to make the case for why a reinvestment in higher education is critical for our state and for our people. We also will be talking about universal transfer. As you all know, we are working hard to ensure that we have more high school students participating in dual enrollment or early college models in our state. We want to make sure that those students get credit for their time and work, as well as our chair has said, for students who are moving between 2-year and 4-year institutions. So we are pursuing work to ensure that we have universal transferability, portability of college credits. We also want to ensure that our counselors are counseling on the importance of dual enrollment. We've built a dual enrollment portal to support their work, and we want to make sure that students are hearing about dual enrollment opportunities from their counselors at schools across the state. Of course, there's a lot of conversation about workforce solutions and particularly shortages in nursing and in teachers. Both of those task forces sit at the Board of Regents. So any work that will occur, whether it's legislative work or budget, fiscal work, innovation opportunities, we will be moving forward to try to support and also to understand how we can best continue to address the significant shortfalls that we see in our state, particularly in the teachers task force, which we met on yesterday. There are a series of bills around return to work. We have some policy work that we're doing. It will take some time to move the pipeline forward, but there's a lot of interest in whether we should allow retirees, current retirees, to return to work to surge and help us with our shortage of teachers. So more to come on those as well. A couple of other bills. LumCon is, I think, the only facility, consortium, if you will, that does not have equal footing with other state higher education institutions or facilities when it comes to procurement. Putting them in the same posture will allow for a more rapid response in terms of recovery. We see this in Hurricane Ida. So we're asking for legislation to support LumCon. And then power-based violence, there was some conversation around alignment of reporting. So we're working with female legislators who brought the power-based violence legislation around any cleanup needed there. TOPS, Dr. Boutte is here, but every year she reminds us that we need to codify the executive orders that were put in place to make sure that students are not penalized through no fault of their own because they had to delay or change their academic calendar as a result of hurricanes or other emergencies. And then you've heard us talk about trying to harden our campuses and to think more proactively about how to build a more resilient state and certainly more resilient institutions. And so we're going to be leaning into that with a resolution designed to help us to think about how to build recovery hubs so that our institutions can be anchor institutions for recovery. So those are a few of the items that we are working on in terms of our legislative agenda. Regent Perez, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Commissioner Reed? Regent Ewing.
Can you tell us, are there any specific efforts or recommendations that are in place or that you're following to do something about the shortage of nurses and teachers? Have you come up with a plan? Is it not on?
There you go.
Is it on now? Okay. Are there specific recommendations or specific plans to try to address the shortage of teachers and
Thank you, Regent Ewing. For the nurses, we've been on a couple of year journey of trying to address this. Now, let me also say that pre-pandemic, we had shortages. COVID certainly has accelerated some of those challenges with the workforce. So one of the things that we continue to try to advance is building our nurse capitation dollars so that we can produce more nurses from our colleges of education. So dollars have been put in each year over the last, I think, 2 years, Matthew, to provide to the colleges of nursing to try to expand the pipeline of nurses that we graduate. So we're working on that.
Is that direct support to the student?
direct support to the institution. Right, to expand the pipeline, the number of nurses that they can enroll. Because as you know, we have, through the, Regent Sterling will help me, through the nursing boards, we have a ratio of nursing educators to students. And so we've been trying to address that issue. We also have nursing educators who are retiring, and so it's complicated. But we're trying to ensure that we're producing more nurses. We certainly see more private industry stepping in, and public-private partnerships are very important. I don't know, Regent Sterling, if you want to also share other ideas.
No, I think Commissioner Reed is exactly right. On the student support side, there are endless opportunities for a student to gain scholarship or support on the private side as far as tuition support. Now, that is typically tied to a commitment to an organization, which then is intended to keep them in our state. So on the student support side, I think there's reasonable support. There always could be more. But on the faculty side, to what Commissioner Reed talked about, to make sure that we have adequate faculty, that's where a lot of the effort working with the workforce team is really looking at with the capitation dollars, that we have enough faculty so that we never turn down a student who is ready to get into their clinical portion, but they're turned down because there's not faculty. And then, of course, there is a lot of support on the private side, because I think ultimately this is a public-private partnership opportunity, not just a government solution. And so you may have heard the announcement that was made on 2 Fridays ago, where LCMC in New Orleans is partnering with LSU with a $10 million grant that's going to be intended to partner with LSU. LCMC has also partnered and brought a private institution to increase enrollment. So there's a lot on the private side as well. But I think our role is in making sure that faculty balance is there and there's adequate support, so no student who is ready for nursing clinical gets turned away.
And then on the teacher side, I think there's such a parallel in terms of trying to grow our own, trying to understand where the critical shortages are. And as I mentioned, there is an interest in looking at return to work, but also paraprofessionals to teachers, mid-career changers to teachers, troops to teachers. Like, how do we lift the profession and encourage more people to be a part of the profession? And so that will certainly be part of the conversation, as well as the executive budget proposal to increase teacher pay in our state.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Regent Ewing. Any other questions for Commissioner Reed? Any comments before we move on? Regent Meyer.
I have one question. I mean, I love the agenda. It's very diverse. Is there anything on the legislative agenda that you'll need help from us, that you think you'll need us to step in?
Next meeting. Yeah, so certainly it will be important for us to have a strong voice when it comes to reinvestment, talking to all the legislators about the importance of that, business community leaders talking about that investment as well. And then, Regent Meir, as particular bills are being scheduled, we certainly can reach out if you have expertise or interest. But I think in Louisiana, we will need a continued full court press to talk about why investment in higher education is an investment in Louisiana and our prosperity. So I want to definitely put an exclamation point on that one.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions or comments for the commissioner?
Only comment is just for the entire team. I mean, we just very, I don't want to say nonchalantly, but we did just see the highest increase. I've been here 7 years. That was the highest increase. I think that deserves a hand, right? Or applause or something, right? Because that is a very, very, very big deal, which is why Matt was so excited to, was so excited to present that to us. So great work to everyone involved, and obviously thank you to the governor and the legislature to get that to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any other business to come before the Legislative Committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn this committee meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Facilities and Property Committee. Regent Meir, please call your committee to order, sir.
We'll go ahead and call the Facilities and Property Committee to order. Can I get a roll call from Mr. Herring?
Yes, sir, thank you. Chair Meir,
Present.
Regent Levy, Regent Ewing, Regent McDonald, Regent Weil, Regent Jackson,
Here.
Dr. Tarver, Dr. Clark. We have a quorum.
Great. We'll now go ahead and move to agenda item number 3, the consent agenda. So you can go ahead and proceed, Chris.
Yes, sir. The consent agenda contains 9 small capital projects and 4 third-party projects that have been approved since the last report to the board. I'd be happy to answer any questions about them. Otherwise, we recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Members, are there any questions? You've heard the recommendations. Are there any questions? If not, I would like to get a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Regent Levy.
Second.
Second by Regent Finley. Any questions on reading? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it. We'll move on to Act 959.
Just as a reminder, Act 959 allows institutions to pursue capital projects up to $5 million as long as the funding source is not derived from the state. In this instance, the University of Louisiana Lafayette's New Iberia Research Center secured a grant from the National Institutes of Health for $3.5 million to build 2 new 11,000 square foot primate housing facilities at the campus there. These will replace 2 modular facilities to improve the housing situation for the primates that will be housed there. This will allow them to further their research that's sponsored by the NIH, as well as to expand additional research and educational opportunities for students and staff at the location. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this project.
Members, you've heard the recommendation from senior staff. Is there any questions? If not, I would like to get a motion to approve Act 959. That's possible. Second. Motion by Regent Levy. We have a second by Dr. Clark. Great. Any questions on the readiness? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions? The motion passes, and we'll move on to other business. Ms. Herring?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to give the board a heads up that, as Dr. Reed mentioned, we engaged a local consultant, Emergent Method, to help us develop a resiliency framework to allow higher ed to better respond and recover from disasters, whether man-made, natural disasters, any kind of event that disrupts the campus community. It's a multi-pronged approach. The first component is the resiliency framework itself, where we've identified 4 areas that will go towards bringing the campuses back. Those areas are the return of academics and research, return of physical facilities and infrastructure, the safe return of students to campus, as well as the return of an institution's business functions. What we've done here is we've identified campus level staff as well as at the system level that will be responsible for providing information in these 4 broad categories after an event occurs. We'll have the report ready for next month, so I'll be able to provide a report in greater detail next month, but I wanted to make you aware that this was something we were working on. It also consists of a needs assessment, which will follow after the framework portion, where we will identify specific needs on each campus that will allow us to better advocate across the street with all relevant stakeholders to better harden our facilities, as she mentioned, and help us prepare for any future events. And the last component is the Resiliency Center, where we're going to pilot that at Fletcher Technical Community College's campuses in Houma and Shriver. And you know, as she mentioned, the local community colleges are an asset to the community itself, and it allows to utilize state assets already in place to help the community as a whole better respond to a disaster event. So I'd be happy to answer questions at this time. Again, we'll have a more detailed report in March.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for Chris regarding this resiliency plan? Hearing none, is there any other business to come before the committee?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Mayor. Thank you, Regent Mayor. Next up, we have Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Regent David, please call your committee to order, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call, Dr. Denley. Will you call the roll?
Regent Betty.
Here.
Regent Fenton. Here. Regent Pryor. Regent Sullivan.
Here.
Regent Stewart.
Here?
Regent Williams Brown.
Here.
Regent Jackson.
Here.
Dr. Jarvis. Here. Dr. Clark. Here.
Oh, thank you. All right, thank you so much. I think we're gonna move to item 3, the consent agenda.
Yes, today's agenda includes 3 program terminations, progress reports for recently approved programs, and routine staff approvals. Staff recommends approval of the item on. Thank you very much. On the consent agenda.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
Members, any questions? You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Approve.
I heard a motion. Regent Brown? And a second? Second. From Regent Solomon. Any further discussion, any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Next up is item 4, academic programs. Dr. Denley.
Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda are 2 academic program proposals. I'll present them both together and then make one recommendation at the end. So the first proposal is an Associate of Applied Science in Diagnostic Medical Stenography at Berger Parish Community College. So this program will serve as the only associate degree of its kind at a public institution in the north part of the state. Currently, Baton Rouge Community College and LSU Eunice, they'll offer this sonography program elsewhere in the state, but we, of course, need to increase capacity for all of our healthcare programs across the state, and so this will be an important building block towards that. The proposed degree program is based on the requirements of the American Registry of Diagnostic Medical Sonography and prepares graduates to take the certified exam upon completion. BIPSI's developed partnerships with Shreveport Berger and also employers of diagnostic medical sonographies across the state to place graduates upon certification. The second proposal is a Bachelor of Science in Hospitality and Food Industry Leadership at Southern University, A&M College in Baton Rouge. So this program prepares students for professional leadership roles in Louisiana's hospitality and tourism industry. I'm sure I don't need to persuade you how important that industry is to our statewide success. So the curriculum includes courses that cover food and beverage, restaurant industry, lodging management, event management. It has a strong experiential learning component, actually even has an optional study abroad component. I'm sure we're all looking forward to students being able to take advantage of that. Southern's developed the program to be available 100% online to provide options for working professionals to take advantage of this program. And in its role as an HBCU, this institution is uniquely positioned to increase the diversity at the management level for the hospitality industry. So senior staff recommends approval of these 2 program proposals as presented.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions?
I'd like to ask a question.
Regent Ewan, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Both of these seem to certainly have merit, but refresh me, where does the request come from? Does that come from the university, the community college? Where do we get the request for expanding the academic programs? And what research is done to support the worthiness and the use that you would have? Do we have any numbers on how many people would probably be in either one of these particular? And I'm just picking out these 2 because they're in front of us. But all the procedure, I guess, is what I'm asking about. And it seems to me that sometimes we get proposals and then it's researched and then it's brought back. Is that what's happened here?
So the process goes like this. So the creation of degrees begin at campuses. and then those campuses actually prepare those materials and submit them to the management boards for approval by the management boards at that level. Those proposals then, having been approved by the management boards, come to the academic affairs staff here at the Board of Regents, and those degrees really go through a pretty significant kicking of the tires to make sure exactly what it is that's going on for these degrees, making sure that the curriculum is well created, that there is a statewide need, that there is not some undue duplication across the state, and also that there is, a demand for degrees like this. What would people
The
do?
demand,
with
how
a-
many students do we think
Exactly
will be
right.
involved?
And capacity and so on.
Oh.
Actually, as it happens, we are currently working on a modification to this program approval process, really to hone in on really making sure that as we bring new degrees before this body and create new degrees across the state, that right from their inception, right from the moment of design, when faculty are putting together those degrees, that we're starting to think about all of those issues. What role is this degree program playing? How will it prepare students for the variety of different careers that a degree like this might pertain to? How are we making sure that when we build the curriculum, that curriculum does actually contain the kinds of curricular elements that those industries would really like to see as part of their degrees? And then, of course, how can we make sure that those degrees really are sustaining and successful and contributing to the 2030 goals that we have to make sure that Louisiana prospers in the ways that we would like?
So instruction is in place. We feel that there is a demand, that there will be the students. And I suppose there's been some cost-effectiveness review. Okay, so as we vote to accept these, we feel comfortable that all that has taken place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, members, you've heard the recommendation from senior staff. Is there a motion to approve? Is that Regent Meir? Oh, Regent Tarver. And a second?
Supervisor Tarver.
All right, and a second, sorry. And a second from Regent Jackson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Next, item 5, the 2020-2021 Articulation and Transfer Report. Dr. Denley, yours again.
Thank you, sir. So the final item on today's agenda is the 2021 Articulation and Transfer Report. So this report is statutorily mandated as an annual report to provide a status on the update on transfer credits and associate's degrees across public institutions in the state. As many of you will remember from our conversation at the board development this morning, this really this report is part and parcel of legislation passed back in 2009 that created our statewide Articulation and Transfer Council, created our articulation matrix, and also created the Louisiana transfer degrees. So this report really is a pulse check on how it is that those elements are working, and give a lot of numbers and details as to how it is that is working. I want to share a couple of highlights of that and really lead into some further action around this report. So this chart, which is there in the report, really shows on an ongoing basis this last year's 2021 graduates from from our two-year institutions, the 343 graduates in the Louisiana Transfer Associate's degrees. One of the things really to notice is that over the dozen years that the Louisiana Transfer degree has been in existence, of course, initially it was on a growth phase. It was after it was initially created, but it has basically flatlined at something around 300 or so graduates each year. Put that in perspective, we graduate somewhere around 6,000 students with associate's degrees each year. So that 300 is really a very small proportion of the associate's degrees which are granted across our state. It is the case that, at least up until recently, for those graduates who do indeed earn the Louisiana transfer degree, that the healthy proportion of those students actually do what it is that the degree was intended for them to do. They transfer to a 4-year degree, and when they get there, are successful in earning that degree. You can see this is, again, a sort of a concerning trend over those recent years, of the fact that those students are in smaller proportions actually transferring to our institutions. Perhaps this is due to COVID and its effects, but we really want to make sure that we pay careful attention to that. So, moving forward. We would like to, and we are developing both statutory language and also policy language really to strengthen the way in which transfer functions across our systems. I think we all believe that when students earn college credit, that not only should it transfer to other institutions when they transfer, but that it should transfer in ways that contribute towards their degrees. It shouldn't be sort of an empty transfer where it's just hours on their transcript. Whenever possible, we need it to be the case that those credits actually transfer and count towards their degree plan and further their progress towards degrees. And so we are recommending the creation of transfer pathways. Transfer pathways which would exactly guarantee that whenever students follow those transfer pathways, they can be assured that no matter which school that they decide to attend, that they know that all of the courses that are on those transfer pathways really do count not only towards just graduation hours, but actually count towards their degree plan and further their ability to be able to graduate. Similarly, we are working on making sure that all kinds of credit that students earn along their educational journey really is honored towards their graduation requirements. And so, again, we are strengthening the understanding of credit for prior learning. Well, there is a large umbrella of different kinds of experiences, early college experiences, military experiences, industrial training, all kinds of ways in which students can earn credit for prior learning towards their degrees. We want to make sure that when they do that, again, those credits really do count towards their degrees, and those credits really do count even if they decide to move to another institution. And then lastly, really trying to take the mystery out of understanding what these courses do in fact represent. We currently represent all of that in our academic articulation transfer matrix. The matrix it's puzzling. It's difficult to understand. It's mysterious for high school counselors and also for families to be able to understand what course counts for what, where. And so we're trying to take the mystery out of that by, again, creating a good and clear platform that would allow all of those constituencies really to know what it is that's happening. So those are all items that I hope to bring to this group in future meetings. But with that, I recommend that the board receive the 2021 report, Articulation and Transfer, and authorize Regents staff to submit this report on behalf of the board to the House and Senate Committees on Education.
Thank you, Dr. Denley, for tackling this issue and getting all the people in the room together to try to get this thing figured out. Regent Seal, you have a question?
I do. Dr. Denley, with your, I'm sorry.
You're on.
Okay. With your extensive experience from many parts of the country, how would you describe where Louisiana is with articulation and transfer compared to how other states are doing it?
So actually, I think there are some really wonderful pieces that Louisiana has, and what we really need to do is to take full advantage of all of those pieces. The 2009 legislation which was put in place, at the time when it was put in place, was actually very far-reaching. And so when it comes to course-by-course transfer, those pieces really give us a very strong foundation to be able to make sure that when students earn college credit in one of our institutions, that they really can, with all assurity, make sure that when they go to a different institution, that they can make sure that that course really does count in the way that they would hope. That's course by course. Course by course transfer will never get us all the places that we would like to go. Because the reality is that in every well-meaning way, a student might, for instance, take a history course, and then they transfer to an institution. That history course, sure enough, transfers. It satisfies their general education requirement in history. And then the major that they take says, well, yeah, but we didn't want you to take that history course. We wanted you to take a different history course. Or maybe they took psychology and they should have taken microeconomics. You get the idea that when they get to that institution, there are specific program requirements which had they known about those requirements earlier, they might have been able to make different choices about the courses they took, but they didn't know, or maybe they changed in the journey and all of those kinds of things. So really creating those clear, universal, dependable, guaranteed pathways. If the student stays on that pathway, no matter where they start, they can guarantee that all of those courses count when no matter where it is that they go. That is the piece which I believe Louisiana needs really to do everything we'd like to do in transfer.
Are there some states that have this down cold, that did get it exactly right?
I don't know that anybody has it down cold, but there are certainly some states which have put pieces together in a more effective way, and we have really tried to be students of those states in the language that we have prepared and the policies that we envisage bringing before this board.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody? All right, we've heard the recommendations by senior staff. Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Second. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Any other business to come before the Academic and Student Affairs Committee?
No other business, sir.
Anyone else? Motion adjourned?
Thank you, Regent David. Oh,
Accepted.
you haven't moved. I'm
Accepted.
moving.
No, we got it, all right. All right, there we go.
Right. So he looked to the right, and I didn't hear anybody, so I just jumped in. As we move on to, thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Denley. As we move on to the Research and Sponsored Initiatives Committee, unfortunately, Chair Wild was unable to make it at the last minute, and Regent May, Chair May was absent. So Regent Perez, may I appoint you as the chair of the Research and Sponsored Initiatives today?
Mr. Chairman, I thought you would never ask.
Thank you so much.
You're his
So-
first choice.
Right, exactly. Please call your committee to order, Regent Perez.
I will do so. I'd like to call the Research and Sponsored Initiatives Committee to order. Ms. Robinson, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Regent Weil, Regent May, Regent Finley. Here. Regent Muir,
Present.
Regent Seal. Here. Regent Solomon. Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 3, the consent agenda. Ms. Robinson.
Yes, we have one item on the consent agenda. That's appointment of an endowed chairholder at LSU without a national search. The chairholder is Dr. Thomas Greckhammer, and he will hold the Rux chair in the College of Business Administration. So the senior staff recommends approval, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Robinson? You have heard the recommendation. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you, Regent Seal. There's a motion by Regent Seal. Is there a second? And there's a second by Regent Meyer. Any discussion or questions? Feedback? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you all. On to other business. Ms. Robinson, you have one more item for us?
Yes, ma'am. Just an information item for the board. The endowment program study that the board requested staff conduct in December of 2021 has gone forward. We have contracted with NACUBO, that's the National Association of College and University Business Officers. They do significant national work around endowments and an annual endowment study. So we've contracted with NACUBO to run this study. They have engaged 2 consultants, and interviews of stakeholders across the endowment programs are ongoing practically as we speak. I think we have some meetings today with the consultants, and the consultants are interviewing 4 different groups of stakeholders across the endowment program. We have already also provided them significant information on our ongoing operations. They'll be looking at both the operations and the utility of our programs going forward. And the report is going to be due to the board later in the spring. We hope to bring it to you in, we probably won't have a May meeting, but in June of 2022.
Thank you. Any questions or feedback for Ms. Robinson? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? There's a motion and a second. Thank you. Any discussion or questions before we do that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you so much, Regent Perez. Now on the statewide programs committee meeting. Regent Ewing, please call your committee to order, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Bote to the table to call the roll. How you doing today?
I am well. Regent Temple thinks I'm faster than I am. But I appreciate
Well, he's trying to move along. You know, these committees go
Regent
by.
Perez went so fast, I couldn't, you know.
Well, the pace is always set by how close we are to lunch.
Yes, sir, and I will try to help with that. Chair Ewing,
Here.
Vice Chair McDonald. Regent Finley. Regent Meir. Regent Pryor. Regent Weil. Regent Jackson.
Here.
Members, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the agenda, and I believe the first item is the consent agenda.
Yes,
Would you
sir.
please present that?
We have two consent agenda items, members. The first one is the approval of final rulemaking. This is rulemaking that you initiated in August, and it basically implements into rule the provisions of Act 334 and Act 95 of the 2021 regular legislative session. And the next consent agenda item is approval of two TOPS exceptions. The LOSFA Advisory Board has reviewed both of these items and recommends approval of both.
Is there any discussion on this recommendation? Here none, move that these be accepted. You're asking for those,
Yes, a motion to approve.
a motion to approve the recommendation on these consent items. Got a motion and a second.
Okay, so Regent Meir for the motion and Regent McDonald for the second? All right, I got you.
They're interchangeable.
I appreciate
All those
the
in
help,
favor of the
Regents.
motion, say aye. All those opposed? There were no questions. Okay, the next item, let's see, I believe you have,
An update for you.
yeah, the
Yes.
TOPS funding update.
Yes, and this is not a voting item, this is simply an informational item to update you on. You saw that Mr. Labriere provided you with the budget, and you noted that we did not have an increase for TOPS, so you can say first, you're welcome. And so we're here to say why you don't have an increase in budget requested for TOPS for the next year. We thought that you would want to know that, the reasons behind it. So first of all, let me say in summary, there isn't one reason that you don't have an increase requested in TOPS. There are multiple reasons combined. And even though we had what we could consider a perfect storm between natural disasters, as in hurricanes, and the disaster, whatever you want to call COVID, right, combined together, we still came within a break-even point of you had an increase in students that could have gotten exceptions and weren't kicked off. That could have resulted in an increase in funding. But you had that offset by hurricanes and by COVIDs and student attendance. So you've got a neutral net effect. You don't have an increase requested. So let's delve into that a bit. The first thing that you see is enrollment trends, and really that goes to the heart of what affects the TOPS projection. A TOPS projection is basically affected by student behavior. Do they attend? Do they not attend? Are they eligible? Are they not eligible? And where do they go? Because the award varies by which institution they attend. Preliminary enrollment survey that the Board of Regents conducted says that you have an estimated 2.6% decrease in undergraduate enrollment for fall 2021. We start our TOPS projections at the year double checking them by that fall to fall enrollment. So when you see a decrease, then you start watching, right? So we see a projected 2% decrease. The preliminary decrease in TOPS eligible recipients shows a very similar to that 2.6 decrease in your overall higher education population. That's TOPS, that's all y'all, plural of y'all. shows a similar decrease of 3.1% when you look at public universities. And when you combine private universities and proprietary and cosmetology schools, which students can use their TOPS award at, you get a 3.4% decrease. Now, what does that mean? That means the number of folks that showed up for TOPS that we paid, right? Not whether they were eligible or not at this point, but you're talking overall, we paid fewer people. Why do we think we paid fewer people? First of all, you had a decrease in the high school graduates process. Now, what that means is you can graduate from high school in the state of Louisiana given the privacy laws. While you're in high school, your parents have to give consent for LASFA to even see your information. If they do not, we never see your information to process you because we can't legally get it, right? So that's why we say number of high school graduates processed. It's who I got information on, my big three, ACT, FAFSA, or the online application for TOPS, and their student transcript system records. Then you had a decline in how many of those students decided that they were going to go to school immediately after high school graduation. Remember, under normal circumstances, no perfect storm at all. Weather's clear, everything's fine. A student has 1 year to accept their TOPS award, which means just because they didn't accept it this year, they can come back. No penalties there. Then you had the overall decline in undergraduate enrollment that we started off talking about. That's not a TOPS, non-TOPS, that's an all y'all population, right? And then you had exceptions. There's your perfect storm. Hurricanes, COVID. Hurricanes and COVID combined. All right, so we give you a bit of data on this, where you see the decrease in the high school graduates processed. Our model is based upon the estimates that we get from the Louisiana Department of Education. Their estimates generally say you can expect to put into your model a 1% increase in the graduating class. If you just look at that column on the left, you can see that right from the folks that were processed in 2019 to the folks that were processed in 2021, you have more than a 1% decrease from that 26.2 to 24.6. You've got a decrease in the number that were processed. You see 39,230. Then you see that number decrease from 37,519. So your denominator for who I could even look at decreased. Move over one column to the right. Okay, so I'm starting with a decreased number of students that I can even look at. Then how many of those students that I can look at were eligible? You see it was 26.248, and then it's 24.653. Again, so now I have a decrease in the number of students that were actually determined eligible. They had the ACT, they completed the core, they had the GPA on the core. It's not a real big secret that K-12, that 1920 and 2021 were not best years for students in K-12 because of all of the disasters affected. It could be that, could be other things. So your percent eligible decreased. So you go across from, I had fewer students I could look at. I had fewer students eligible for TOPS. That gives you your number to the right. Okay, so now we've got a smaller base to work with. This is high school graduates only, not students who are already in the pipeline with TOPS. Then how many of those students decided that, you know what, right after high school graduation, I'm going to go to school? Well, when you look at in 2019-20 to 2021, right, 17,399 went to 15,094. So those are students that for whatever reasons, they went to work. They needed to help their family to pay bills. They decided that, I can afford a gap year. This might be a great year to take one because I don't do well with online learning. Or, you know what? I'm not about the whole vaccination or continued testing thing, so I'm not sending my kid. Or I'm just generally going backpacking through wherever country I can get in. There's a myriad of reasons why they wouldn't accept it, all personal, because it's legal for them to do so. But the bottom line is they did so at a rate of a decrease of 7.69%. So you can see you're adding those cumulative factors. All right, so then now we come to the students that are, we're not talking about high school students now, we're talking about post-secondary students that are enrolled for TOPS. Well, and non-TOPS, right? So you see on the left, and this is what we started with, saying that you've got a preliminary decrease nationally in post-secondary enrollment, both graduate and undergraduate only. So you've got a national phenomenon going on, not just a Louisiana thing. And you've got a very similar decrease in the number of TOPS recipients. Now, we're not talking about who was eligible, we're talking about who showed back up to school during COVID and hurricanes, who's already been determined eligible, right? And if they don't show up, then we do not pay them. So you have a decrease in the number of students that you paid a bill for. That's what that means when we see that 3.1%. And if you look over where it says public higher ed subtotal, I know that's a lot of numbers. That's what we started with telling you. You had a 3.1% decline, and that's all of your undergraduate enrollment at public institutions. Then when you add your private schools and you add your proprietary and cosmetology schools, look at that decrease that they experienced. Now again, that sounds like a big percentage, but you're not looking at huge numbers, but that combines to give you that overall 3.4% decrease. Okay, so if that wasn't enough, right, here comes some of the reasons behind those decreases. We said, high school graduates, I have that year to accept. Right now, if you are not a high school graduate, you already have TOPS. You are expected, you're legally required to continually enroll full-time, right? That's our 12 hours. You're expected to get those hours, and you're expected to continue to show up. But we had a few little things in our neighborhood of Louisiana that impacted that. First of all, you had hurricanes Laura, Delta, and Zeta in 2020. And if we weren't tired enough of that, you have Ida that came back in 2021. And think about the time Ida hit, you also had a resurge in COVID. So if you are in school online and you do not have power, you got some problems. Whether you are in the parishes affected or you're not in the parishes affected, you're at your house, right? So we're seeing those things. So we saw who would be eligible for automatic exceptions, and we brought this to you before, so we said, we could try as a staff, we didn't want to approve those types of exceptions for something this massive, one by one by one by one. We would not have been able to do anything else, anybody at LASFA. So you had blanket exceptions. If you were in the parishes affected, as declared by the executive order that said this is who gets FEMA assistance, these are these parishes, right? Then you got that exception. Or if the school that you attended was in one of those parishes, you got that exception. So they could have, it's either your home record where you live or where you attend school. So all of that impacted the numbers. And in your executive summary, we give you an idea of over 46,000 students were eligible for those exceptions for the hurricanes. And we give you an idea of what that meant, which means I don't have to continue to enroll. I have more time to get my grades. I have more time to get my hours, because I might not even have a house, right? And if I have a house, the grid was destroyed, I sure as heck I'm not getting power or internet anytime soon. We all watch that in horror. And then I have the COVID exceptions, right? So basically out of all of those perfect storms, right, you could have said, all those students got to buy, right? That could have increased your cost, because people that would have gotten kicked off didn't get kicked off. Because you think about it, 54,000 in TOPS recipients, right? Over 46,000 got automatic exceptions. So what happened is we got a perfect storm, or a compilation of things. You had a decrease in enrollment, folks coming back, and you had a decrease on your high school side. So when you look at that very bottom line, why are we not asking for additional money next year? Why are we leaving it level? Because your original projection for TOPS, that model, said, okay, we're going to assume, before the world did a lot of crazy things, a 2% increase in TOPS expenditures. Well, we assumed a 2% increase, and you actually had a 2% decrease in TOPS expenditures, right? So you got an even Steven playing field. The top bullets just summarize what we've talked about before. Projection tool assumed we'd have a 1% increase in the number of high school graduates that were going to be processed. There was actually a 4% decrease. The projection tool uses a 5-year weighted average for acceptance rates. So that would have projected out, without the perfect storm, 68.8% acceptance rates. Instead, you had 61.2% acceptance rates for various and sundry reasons. So out of all of that, we did pretty good to break even, and the model still came within this percentage. So what are we doing now? When you see something like this, we are looking into, so can you look into the data and do some really deep dives to see, is it, you can surmise, I think it's the students with a limited income. I just think it's them. And I just think it's the students of color. When you look at this data, we getting some all y'all effects, as in across the board, right? So we look at who was most affected, and we've given you this data, and we do have, like, hot off the press, literally. We're going to send Doreen a link to the updated link in the file, Doreen. We're going to put in the data for eligibility. So I'm going to explain what I'm saying by you looking at these charts. You've got so many numbers here, we color-coded it for you. Not because we don't think you can look at it, but because it makes your head hurt if you don't. So number of high school graduates eligible for TOPS and number of eligible students not accepting TOPS. So we broke it down by the things that you usually ask us most frequently, like by ethnicity and by income. So look at the coding that's blue. Right? So the blue number on the first column is 39,263. That's your 2020. You keep going, chucking along to the right, and you see 2021, another blue column, right? You're going to see that left column, blue and blue, that's where you're going to see your decreases. So we made it for each point, the color coding say it's easier to track across. If you just want to say, how did number A compare to number B from 2020-21? So you're seeing decreases across the board. When you talk about next steps with this, so we looked at income, we looked at race. Let me be very, very clear about something. Even though that's a thing that folks are always curious about TOPS, here's the important thing to remember to me. None of that has anything to do with eligibility. I cannot give you TOPS because of your race or your income, and I cannot take your TOPS away from you because of your race or your income. So what we did is to say, well, how about what you can give a person TOPS for and take TOPS away? So that information that I said that we've loaded into Ignite, right, and Doreen has the updated link, then you're not going to only see race and ethnicity, you're going to see core, who completed it and who didn't. GPA on said core. I didn't say PE and all those things. I said TOPS core, right? What's your GPA on said core, and what ACT did you get? So you're going to have that data. Might also ask yourself, well, what about the kids? You had all those hurricane exceptions. Were kids losing TOPS at a greater rate without exception? Retention rate is increased. So it's not that we're retaining fewer TOPS recipients for their eligibility. It's just that a lot of stuff happened that impacted students. And the best case scenario we have is to, when you see things like this on a 5-year projection, right, where 2% is a lot of money if you're talking about $330 million to the general public. That's a lot of money, right? So you watch, you wait, because remember I said, if you're on an exception, you got the potential to come back. If you didn't accept the award when you first graduated from high school, you have the ability to come back. So we have to watch and wait to see what those enrollment patterns are doing for the spring into next fall. And then we have to watch, wait, and begin to look into, which is what you see the data that we're doing. Basically, all of that to say, the highlighted in yellow, because that's a lot of numbers, we thought you'd like to see that TOPS generally clips along, right? You got, when you don't have grad act, when you don't have this, when you don't have that, you generally got that between 1% and 2% on student behavior. But this year, for 2021-22, 330, 934, the amount we're requesting from the legislature for 2022-23, same amount, 330, 934. While we do what? Watch and wait and look into and listen. So next steps for the listening part, right? The look into is the data we're showing you, right? The listen part is to begin to engage focus groups of post-secondary students and high school students, because you kind of silly to engage a focus group and listen before you look into, because you need to see, you know, by high school, by parish, is there any consistent pattern, right, of deeper affected areas when you've got an all y'all effect? And we don't have the capacity to focus group all y'all. That's over 50,000 students, right? Wish we did, we don't, right? So we are going to be looking at that data. We're working with our contractor, Vela, who's working with us on best case services mixes and outreach, right? What's most impactful. They're going to be designing the questions. They're going to actually be facilitating training for our college advocates that will be doing the focus group, so you'll have some consistency there. And then we're going to get that qualitative side of, so what happened? Right? And the what had happened was. So that then we watch, wait, listen, and then while we're at level funding, see if this was a blip or a perfect storm, or if it's a beginning of a different trend. We will keep you posted. And that does it for that update.
You know, for something that we spend as much money on, I think we need that kind of report all the time. Let me ask you this. Would the fact that we have a lot of students that are eligible for TOPS but that go to school out of state, would that be in that number?
That is one of those things that it costs money to look into, so we might be hitting Mr. Labriere up for some more once we find out how much that is. To run that data, so if I don't pay a student with LOSFA, I have no business knowing where you are. Right, is Matthew making a face? Oh God, he's moving. It's like he actually got up. So with the National Student Clearinghouse data is what we would run that against to be able to determine, did they go out of state to school? And that is a per record, per run charge. They want their money up front before they even run the data. They changed. Then we could look at, okay, working with the agreements that Regents has, your MOUs with the commission. Did more students go into apprenticeship programs? They could have, right? Did more students go to work? Well, I wouldn't have that data, right? So then, but you have an agreement with revenue. So all of those things, as we watch and wait and listen and look into, are being looked at. But yes, sir, short answer is yes, it could have, and we will be looking into that.
I see friends of ours that have students, and I know from a personal situation that there is a real active recruitment effort
Yes, sir.
underway on the part of some states to attract the same students that would be eligible for the best TOPS
Yes, sir.
award. So I just felt, look at those numbers, that's bound to be it. The other thing
You
is,
agree?
I noticed the other day that they're projecting that there are at least 1 million less students in higher education across the nation today than there were before COVID. So there may be a national trend going, but 3.1% is probably better than a lot of other states.
Yes, sir, because we, NCAN, the National College Attainment Network, actually worked with the clearinghouse and with the federal processor on the FAFSA data, right? And maybe about a month ago, we saw a red flag come out with, whoops, you've got fewer students filing the FAFSA. Well, if you're not filing the FAFSA, that means you're not intending on going. So when you look at your economy and your job market to say, I got some issues maybe and some support, so I could make, I may go through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A. I have it on my app. Yeah, I'm a high-level member. But that says $13 an hour starting wage. I've had folks report that Foot Locker is 15 to 21 an hour. Now, again, right, if I've got some issues, I may choose, right, to go to work first, and I've got a hot job market, and then I've got a gig market that I can make, and then I've got TikTok and Instagram telling me I don't need any of this to be a star and to make more money sitting in the privacy of my home, being my own boss, or wherever it is I am, that I do these things. I do not. But we have all of those things impacting it, none of which TOPS controls. So it is a lot to look at. Mr. Lafayette,
Regent Seal has a question.
were you going to say yes, you will give us the money for it, or did you have something else?
Mr. Chairman.
Since you walked
Matthew, you
out
didn't
here.
hear the question, but
Mr. Chairman,
Regent Ewing was asking a question, and right when you walked in,
My ears were ringing.
yes, Suwan mentioned that Matthew might have to give us more money to study. So that was you don't have to comment, she just was referencing that we may be calling on you.
And he's shaking his head.
And he's
yes.
shaking his head, yes.
But we're glad to have you join us. Regent Seal, I believe, has a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Down here on the end.
And the
Dr.
question I
Butte,
have, are we
Wait,
on?
wait just a minute. I called on Regent Seal. Can I get you?
I'm
next?
sorry.
Yeah.
The question I have is, if you look at just the population of 18-year-olds in the nation, are you familiar with what the population trend is for the 18-year-old population going out, let's say, 5 years? I understand it is declining somewhat significantly. Do you know if that's correct?
That is not something that we've looked at nationwide, but it's certainly something that we can look at to see what those, we're seeing the decline here. And we've asked the Department of Education to look at their numbers and their estimates for their high school graduates, that we're not seeing a 1% increase trend in, to see what those reasons are locally. But certainly, Dr. Dinley, did you want to add?
Sure. Yes, so that is a national trend, you're exactly right, and it's very regional. So there are, certainly in the Northeast, there is a very significant decline in the size of graduating classes. The general picture all across the nation, and every state has different variations of this general trend, is that there's forecast to be a modest increase and then a fairly significant decrease of the order of 10 or so percent over the time. So it's one of the things we really need to look at here in Louisiana, but the general picture is that we're on the other side of that bubble, and so there will be a gradual decline in the number of graduating high school.
So that would be an important piece of data for planning, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Regent McDonald?
Oh, no, thank you.
Yes, Dr. Butte, and when we passed TOPS, we consolidated about 4 or 5 scholarship
Yes, sir.
programs. And we started out with about 20-something thousand students, I think, 27, 28, 38 million. We have grown now to what, over 56,000 and
54 to
over
56, yes, sir.
330 million. Now, one of the things I'm concerned about is when we pass TOPS, we set some academic standards. Students who achieve in core curriculum make a 2.5, 20 ACT, which is the average ACT nationally. Students could be eligible for TOPS or their tuition to be paid for it. Then we come along 2 or 3 years later, I forget the number of years, and we pass the Go Grant program because we had students that were not reaching the TOPS level and needed assistance in going to the universities or colleges. Now, that program has grown to what right now, do you know?
The funding amount that Mr. LaBriere was saying, that this year we will be at, if we get this particular increase, we'll be at 55 million for GO, which is a little over 55, well, around 55% of what the campuses say they need if they fund students that are eligible within their packaging policy. So that's in the between 25,000 students, closer to 25,000 that utilize that program.
Right.
And
what
with
what is-
crossover, right? You could get both.
Are there any academic standards at all to participate in
No, sir,
the GO Grant
because,
program?
thank you for bringing
It's
that
a need,
important point out.
need-based program?
It is need-based, and whenever, and thank you so much, you are always so magnificent, we can tell your legislative experience. When you start to put academic qualifications in it, it's a merit-based program. As opposed to TOPS, when you start to put a need-based component in it, it's a need-based program. So you've got a merit-based program. What you did in high school determines whether you are eligible for TOPS. What you did in K-12. Not anything that I can control over, or I gotta get myself a better gig if I'm controlling all of that, right? And then need-based is you meet a certain income parameter, and there's no academic requirements for that besides basically federally are you meeting satisfactory academic progress, retaining your Pell Grant, your need-based aid. So yes, sir.
What's the average GO Grant that's given to a student, awarded
It
a student?
varies by campus, and what I have the team doing is we're actually putting that together for the budget presentation, so we'll drop that into the folder as well, so you can get accurate estimates. Because what we're trying to see is, as you've increased 11 million last year, campuses could have done one or two things, or a combination of them. They could have said, okay, I've got 11 million more dollars spread across my allocation. I am going to give more students less money, or I'm going to give fewer students more money, or I'm going to do a combination of the two depending upon my population at my campus. So that's why we're rerunning those numbers now to say, when you gave us that historic increase of 11 million, what combination of those things happened, which is why you'll see those averages by system. We could probably do it by campus as well, right? Ms. Este's listening, so she will. And then as compared to when you didn't have that 11 million. So again, we'll be watching that for 15. So it's our same pattern. You're going to watch, you're going to wait, and you're going to listen and dig into the data.
And the legislature passed the Governor Mike J. Foster program, and that's funded at about what level this year?
10.5 million currently.
Yes. And do you see students maybe as TOPS will, I predict that TOPS will continue to drop because some students academically aren't meeting the standards, and if they can have the GO Grant, or they can drop down to Governor Mike J. Foster grant, then we're offering alternatives to students who do not quite achieve the academic standards for our top
Yes, sir.
top
That's
scholarship.
exactly where you're going
So
with
I
it.
think as we create new programs, TOPS will continue to decline and to some degree.
And
And
I would
as
add-
student enrollment, as it's pointed out,
Yes, sir.
declines, it will decline some.
And let
But
me
I
add
just
one
wanted to point
caveat.
out
If I
that
could add one caveat to it, just so that members, and this is great discussion, and we appreciate it because it helps you understand the challenge financial aid offices have to do what we call braid that funding. Because when you look at the overall completion data, who's most successful when you're putting money together? You hear the 1202 report every year, and yes, TOPS recipients do graduate at higher rates and retain the award at higher rates above the general population. Why is that? It is not rocket science. Those students are prepared, right? The better prepared you are, the more successful you're likely to be, right? But then when we have students that are of limited income and means as well, whom we worry about because they don't have the means to afford the extra things for academic preparation, right? We see that when those students are able, through whatever means we have in support services, to become better prepared, and we braid their TOPS funding with their Pell Grant funding, that's a federal entitlement. You're eligible for it, you're gonna get it. As well as their GO Grant, we see that those students begin to close the gap to a student that just had TOPS, which means they didn't have limited income and somebody had more means to support them. So we do see that. The caveat I was adding with MJ Foster when that comes in. So TOPS, you know, is designed basically, that's your traditional high school student and your traditional college student, right? Go Grant, you set aside saying to campuses, I want you to prioritize returning adults. That's about 25 to 30% of Go Grant recipients are returning adults. So you're already doing that. But then you wanted to say, well, if we get MJ Foster, that is not going to be a mix. That's going to be for returning adults or your non-traditional students. That's why MJ Foster starts currently at 21, which means you're not gonna get a student that is a top student that maybe didn't make TOPS Tech, right? Get MJ Foster, because there's that gap, right? They can't start that program. So now you're starting to build out your portfolio with Go Grant for adults, which you could still get it, and MJ Foster, and now you've got Reboot as well, So the commissioner has very wisely asked, let's watch, wait, and listen to financial aid to say, when you start putting all that money together effectively, are there any priorities and policies that you might need to tweak in one or the other to make it easier to braid it, right? Like you did with the 60% in Go, right? We said, let's take that off the table. This is the first year we'll be able to see that. So yes, still watchword, watch, wait, dig into the data and listen. So yes, sir, but there is just that gap with MJ Foster.
I appreciate it very much. I just want to continue to encourage academic achievement
Yes,
in
sir.
our schools.
Yes, sir.
And not say, you know, hey, forget about making good grades or
As do we.
scoring on national tests. You can get this and get that. We want to continue to encourage our students to achieve as well as they can.
We do.
Thank you, Dr. Boutin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent McDonald. Are there any other questions you have?
One more statement. You know, we just alluded, you so eloquently laid out the gap that may exist because of, you know, financially or just access in general. And I'm just speaking to those that we just did the dual enrollment. That is why, was one of the main reasons why that is so important. But she just mentioned that it closes the gap, right? And just two things to mention. Number one, there's a belief that I can do it, right? And number two, I mean, the belief I can do it, but once again, the other thing you mentioned, I can afford it. I can afford it. We're making it available. So I think that's a direct correlation with why dual enrollment can be a complete game changer for our entire state. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment. I think I applaud the research that you're doing. I think when you talk about watching, the data of whether or not we have, as a result of the things that you talked about, we potentially are going to have learning loss at the collegiate level. We know that it's well documented, the learning loss K through 12 as a result of the pandemic. But your early indicators might suggest that there is going to be a learning loss at the collegiate level and technical level, and what does that look like in the fall? So if we're optimistic and believe that we're going to get to endemic this spring with COVID, and people will settle in through the summer, I think fall enrollment, but the next 3 years of really watching the value and what is that learning loss, I think you're an early alarm bell of we really could have a problem.
And this is where that is really, really profound, because this is where your student success work comes with.
Right.
Is that student support was critical and crucial beforehand. And I cringe when folks say, oh, during budget cuts, I can't cut tenure, I'll just cut student support. And don't ask me about retention rates, right? Don't even pretend to care about it. Because some students are going to need what we like to call that Yeti cruiser to cross the Sahara, which is post-secondary. Yeah, and without it, they don't get across. Who is that? That's student support, that's outreach, that's wraparound services. That's not just money. It's just not that easy, right? So For example, just this morning on the way in, I'm like, okay, so tell me what you've learned in right now. We've got 95 exceptions before committee. I'm gonna have some tired people at LASPA today that you've got 95 coming in. I'm like, are you seeing any trends? Yeah, we're seeing students requesting hurricane exceptions that were not in the affected area. Wait, what now? Why is that? Well, you know, think about it. You had the Delta variant surging at the time you had Ida, I didn't have power, and I was learning online, kind of difficult, right? So then I have a learning gap, which is what we're seeing with students that just could not cut online learning. And we also saw instructors that couldn't cut online teaching, which is those things that I think are gonna come home to roost. So what can we do to support those students and fill in those gaps? Not that that's all LASPA and TOPS, it's not. But it's gonna take another all y'all approach of watching, waiting, digging into the data and listening, I think. And then what I love to say, letting policy follow practice. What is it that you need to do, right? As opposed to what you're doing right now. That might not be working in this new reality we find ourselves in. So thank you so much for those points.
Let me just add that the deep analysis that is happening, or that will continue to happen, is critical for this board to look at. And I really appreciate Dr. Boutte bringing this information forward. We have a big vision for 2030, and along comes so many disruptions. And so we have to understand, how do we mitigate against these disruptions, and what does it mean for the success of our students and our state? And so we are going to walk this journey and make sure you get these kinds of deep briefings so we can talk about, now what do we do? How do we intervene? What does this look like? Are there trends? Where can we advance good work? So I just wanted to make that point. It's not just that we have a neutral budget in TOPS, but that we have a big vision for 2030, and all of this is in service to that, or will derail that.
I will leave you with something that stuck with me at a Gear Up conference. There was a Baltimore educator that was extremely innovative in the face of tough times, and she talked about what she was doing with the data. And she said something that stuck with me and that I repeat to my staff. You look at the data, right? You watch, wait, do a deep dive, and listen. So what? Now what? Can't just be a so what. The now what is why boards like this and folks like you that are informed is so critical. So we're definitely in so what now, and planning on now what right afterwards.
Commissioner Reed, if I might just add and commend you, first of all, for your comments just now about the need to dig deep and really look at things. I was appreciative of the detail, the demographics that Dr. Boutte provided. It would be beneficial from, I think, a system point of view if we can be sure that the information is also done by institution. I think that, you know, you requested or made the comment that looking at the GO grant, you were going to have do some institutional look. And I think that it would help us certainly understand when you talked about IDA and so on. I can, you know, picture that McNeese and Nichols were certainly more adversely impacted and affected, but there may be other regional factors that are impacting other institutions. And certainly when we start to look at the individual demographics of each of the institutions, be very, very helpful. So if we can put that,
No, that's on
that'd be very
our,
helpful.
like, if LASFA's looking at this pertaining to TOPS, how can institutional researchers and folks in enrollment management on the post-secondary side look as well? And then we're converging that data by saying, oh, okay, here's what we're really seeing, and so, great. Now what? What should we do about that to mitigate it? So yes, we're not bored at LASPA in the least bit.
Thank you for that point too, Dr. Clark, because I do think the management boards would benefit from this level of information. So as Dr. Boutte and her team put that together, we will certainly send that forward so that you all too have that information.
Certainly, and to the GO grant discussion and my naivete in terms of individual campus policy that impacts and affects the distribution, certainly is something that as a board member I'd be appreciative of knowing. So looking forward to that.
Are there any other questions? I do think your discussion and your presentation on TOPS then opens up a broader view of the overall goings on and where we are in education. And thank you for that, for your presentation. This is presented as information, does not require a vote. Is there any other business to come before the committee?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion that we adjourn, or y'all want to keep going? So move. A second?
I didn't.
All in favor of
I didn't get the
adjourning?
second. Who did the second? Thank you, Regent Mayor.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Regent Ewing. Thank you so much, Regent Ewing. Next up is Planning, Research, and Performance Committee. Regent Sterling, please call your committee to order, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the Planning, Research, and Performance Committee to order. Dr. Craig, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Sterling. Regent Williams-Brown.
Here.
Regent Finley. Regent Levy. Regent McDonald. Regent Perez.
Here.
Regent Pryor. Regent Weil. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. We will now move to item number 3, the consent agenda. Dr. Craig, please proceed.
Yes, so the only PRP item on the agenda today is the consent agenda. We have one school up for renewal licensure. This is California State University at Northridge. It's a public institution. Its main campus is in Northridge, California. It's accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges and offers online instruction. Currently, there are only 3 Louisiana students in their master's program. In addition, the Advisory Commission on Proprietary Schools met on January the 18th to hear initial applicants and to review renewal applications. The Proprietary Schools Commission is recommending 2 new schools, the Heart Academy in Baton Rouge and True Care Medical Training Center in Gonzales, as well as 16 license renewals. And if there are no questions, senior staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. Members, are there any questions for Dr. Craig? You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval.
We have a motion by Regent Perez and a second by Regent Levy. Any other discussion or any questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Is there any other business, Dr. Craig, to come before the Planning, Research, and Performance Committee?
No, ma'am, there is no additional business. This concludes our agenda.
Great, thank you. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
So moved by Regent Levy, second by Regent Perez. Any discussion, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Mr. Chairman, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect timing. So, I'd like to call the February Board of Regents meeting to order. Members, remember we're being streamed live, so obviously please turn your microphones on, speak into the mic so folks can hear you with our virtual audience. Roll call. We'll now have roll call. Ms. Doreen, please call the roll. Thank you, ma'am.
Regent David. Here. Regent Ewing.
He's here yet, Mr. Brown.
Regent Finley.
Here.
Regent Jackson.
Here.
Regent Levy.
Here.
Regent May. Regent McDonald.
He's here, he had to step out.
Regent Meir.
Present.
Regent Perez.
Here.
Regent Pryor. Regent Seal.
Here.
Vice Chairman Solomon.
Here.
Regent Sterling.
Here.
Chairman Temple.
Here.
Regent Weil. Regent Williams-Brown.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Doreen. Next up is public comments. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, I'll ask for an additional public comments under other business. Members, you've received a copy of our January 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All right, motion made by Seal, second made by Regent David. Any discussions? Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you all. So, a couple comments, guys. Obviously, a whole lot has happened since just January, and we're not even talking about but a couple of weeks removed. But Regent David asked me at the beginning of the meeting this morning, how do I like it? And I'm really enjoying myself. I really am. But I did not realize how the move from a role other than being chairman, how significant it was. So I text him, I got a lot of respect for you. I know he's raising a family, running his business, and this very worthy, very necessary role as chairman. It has been great. Okay. So, but it really has been fun. It's been very eye-opening, and it really is amazing to think about the work that our team does, and it gives a whole. I have a whole another level of respect for our, the team of people that make everything that we do happen. I had a level of respect in the 7 years of being here, right, in pockets, but to be able to see it from an overall perspective, it just really, it gives you an appreciation of it. So definitely a busy job, but I am very much so enjoying it. So I want to say congratulations to our staff because of a clean audit. Let's give them a hand on that one. Always good when an audit is clean, right? Audit focused on the region's contribution to Louisiana's annual comprehensive financial report, and the single audit, which focused on federal award expenditures. This is the second year in a row that we've had a clean audit, 0 findings, and obviously that's a tremendous achievement, as we've already mentioned. That's, once again, speaking directly to our staff and the great work that they're doing every day. And in addition, the auditors reviewed TOPS expenditures. I know you'll be interested to hear about that, Regent McDonald, and eligibility requirements of TOPS, and also issued no findings or concerns regarding our TOPS program. And so I want to give a special shout out to Ms. Liz Bourgeois for coordinating and responding to all the legislative auditors' requests and questions. Also to the staff listed on the slide here in front of you all, who helped the agency achieve a second year with no findings. So why don't we give them an applause, please? All of you all, thank you so much. We definitely appreciate all the work that you're doing. And then, obviously not exciting note, but just want to give special recognition to 2 former Board of Regents members who have passed away. We all hope to live a nice long life like Mr. Richard Dacon, and he was a founding member of the Board of Regents, 95 years old. He was a longtime publisher of the Advertiser newspaper in Lafayette, he's 40 years of service to the Board of Regents. Wow. I'm 42. So that's impressive. That's amazing. He passed away on January 23rd, 94 years old. And then Regent Clifford Smith, lifelong resident of Houma, and he actually lived in the LSU Stadium dormitories, the one that looked horrible until like 6 years ago when they at least fixed up the outside. I still don't know what it looks like on the inside, right? But he passed away a couple days later on January 27th at 86 years old, and he owned T. Baker Smith, which was a civil engineering firm. Regent Levy actually served with both of these gentlemen, and we would love to hear some insight from him about these 2 men.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on.
It's on? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'll just get closer to it. Boy, I like these pictures. They speak volumes. When we were talking about these two gentlemen, they epitomize the definition of public servants. Regent Dockin and Regent Smith were bright beacons of light during their service to this state. If you read their obituaries, they were involved in everything. Not just the Board of Regents, everything in their communities, everything in the state. All of us that served alongside of Richard and Cliff came away as better board members. We came away because of their uplifting attitudes, their support for the Board of Regents and its mission, and because of their collegiality towards their fellow regents. Back then, our Board of Regents meetings were 2 days. We'd meet on Wednesday, spend the night, and finish up on Thursday mornings. We had the chance, therefore, for all of us to get together, sometimes with our spouses, and go out to dinner. Regent Scott Brame, who passed away recently as well, always set up the dinners, and he'd make the reservations, and he'd take the notes as to who was going to come. And he'd go restaurant to restaurant across town to make sure that we were exposed to all the things that Scott knew about. He would make the reservations, however. Dick Dockhand and William Clifford Smith provided the entertainment. They were wonderfully generous with their stories, with their viewpoints, and with their histories. And we all had a chance to benefit from perspectives. In fact, the first year I was on the Board of Regents, Clifford Smith came to me and handed me a book and said, "You can't be in Louisiana and be any kind of a leader without reading it." It was Rising Tide. And I read it, and I came back and I told him, I think all of you have read it too. Thank you, Clifford, for opening my eyes as to the real history of this state. As Chairman Temple indicated, Regent Dockhand was a founding member of the Board of Regents. After the Constitutional Convention of 1973 and the adoption thereafter, a year or so after, they created the Board of Regents, and Dick was there. He was there on an earlier higher education board and transitioned into the Board of Regents. He was there from 1975 until his final term of 2010. He saw higher education go through the elimination of more than 1,000 or 12,000 degree programs in an effort over those years to try to streamline higher education. Absolutely necessary. It's an exercise we still do to this day. In 1977, he voted to adopt the Board of Regents' very first master plan for higher education. That master plan, that new one, started differentiating the missions for colleges and university campuses for the very first time. In the 80s and 90s, he endured 13 years of budget cuts to higher education as a result of the oil bust. But he was also experiencing, after that, many milestones in our post-secondary history. During his tenure, the 8G Fund was created. And all of us know how critical that has been to higher education and K through 12 education. He saw the development of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System. Can you imagine not having that? He was there, he participated, and he led. He oversaw the establishment of minimum admissions criteria for our universities. What could be more important? Along with things such as Lonnie, our Louisiana Optical Network, and as well Lewis, our library collaborative efforts. Regent Clifford Smith was first appointed in 2001 by Governor Foster and was reappointed by Kathleen Blanco. He served until his resignation in 2008. He brought an engineer's analytical approach to all of the Board of Regents' issues and did so with warmth and humor. But he loved this board. in his resignation letter to the governor, he said his serving on the Board of Regents was rewarding and gratifying, and which he had felt that he had assisted Louisiana in its educational attainment. He thanked the governor for a, quote, fulfilling and worthwhile opportunity that allowed him to make positive contributions towards the goals and objectives of this esteemed group. And if we remain an esteemed group, then it is in no small measure due to the individuals like these two gentlemen you see. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to publicly thank them and to express my personal appreciation to each for encouraging and uplifting not only me, but every member that ever knew him. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Regent Leader. Appreciate you sharing the historical perspective about these gentlemen and the service that they offer to this board and this state alike. Next up, I want to turn the microphone over to our student member, Cameron Jackson, who's going to report on the Council of Student Body President's trip to D.C. But before we do that, just kind of go through our the media tour slide. Is there audio, or he's going? I get a chance to talk about it. Now, you all, I got to start off. I was so excited, and I'm gonna be honest. One of the reasons I was so excited is because for the last several years, I got the chance to hear Marty talk about the trip to D.C. with the students, and I remember saying, I know this thing is probably coming up, and then they were like, well, yeah, we're scheduled to go, and I had everything laid out, everything set. And of course, as you all know, the weather was getting crazy, and I got this text message to my phone saying I may not be able to fly out. My son was in a tournament that weekend, and if I could not get out, I'm the coach, as Matt knows. Matthew and I have played against each other. I couldn't miss that. So unfortunately, I could not go because I may not have been able to get back. And I was pretty heartbroken by that. I was really looking forward to going. But through the power of technology, I was still able to participate in a few of the different things with Commissioner Reed on her media tour of the nation's capital, many of which you all have read, some of the articles that came out. We sat down with Inside Higher Education and the Chronicle of Higher Education, Politico's education reporter, share the work that Louisiana Board of Regents, and, very, very, very well received. In both cases, I had to knock them back with a stick from trying to recruit her for national. I was like, whoa. So this is not the line of questioning that we need to be entertaining right now. So, but we really had a great time, and obviously, it was the article came out great as well. And so the commissioner followed up with Inside Higher Education reporter last week to discuss our disaster resiliency on campuses in the wake of all of the disasters that have been taking place in Louisiana. So time was very well spent getting our message out to a national audience. And Cameron, why don't you got something you wanna add?
Well, for starters, I love the picture. I see it just now popped up. But yes, like you said, it was a great experience. I think one of the biggest things that I was telling Commissioner Reed about the morning before we left, I said I just kind of sat back and I watched everything. I didn't really do too much talking. I did a lot of networking, but I didn't do too much talking as far as it came to getting the information. The battles that we're having in higher education is something that's definitely challenging. It's something that we see now. Meeting with Congressman Graves and then Congresswoman Julia Letlow, that was something that we expanded on, especially when it came to ideas of broadband expansion, especially in North Louisiana. She hit on those topics very well, very good. It was an overall lovely experience. We even met with Ted James. We met with a lot of different people, and we was having those sensitive conversations around higher education, especially trying to mix in equity factors as it relates to higher education. Next month, I will actually this weekend, going into next month, we have a COS meeting. We're supposed to be having a COS meeting in April too. I will not be here. I would actually be going to take a mission trip to Ghana. So I'll be exploring Saloba, Accra, and different places in Ghana. I'm taking 150 computers and basically just teaching students out there how to get familiar with the innovation tech where we're at now. So I hope that fulfills my report for this go round. And I'm excited.
That's phenomenal. What part of Ghana are you going to?
So we're going to different parts. So Saboba, that's like a rural village, so to say. We'll be going out there. Then we'll be in the city a little bit closer to the bottom, like right there by the beach area. And then floating all around Ghana, and then we'll kind of head over up into Egypt, and then we'll head back over this way.
That's great.
So,
That's a great trip. Great trip. We're gonna have a. You do another report on that one, okay?
Okay, got you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Regent Jackson. So, as I wrap up my comments, I just want to congratulate the commissioner on an appointment that she has received. You all, Governor Edwards appointed our Commissioner Reed as the new chair of the Louisiana Cybersecurity Commission. So. The Cybersecurity Commission's mission is to advance the state's cyber ecosystem and position Louisiana as a national leader and preferred location for cyber business, education, and research. Obviously, that's something that we definitely need all the way around and are excited about becoming a hub for. Dr. Reed's appointment results in her extensive higher education and government experience, as well as her timeless efforts to increase educational attainment, including through our state's cybersecurity programs. As you know, our colleges and universities are being called upon to meet the rapidly growing demand for those who protect data and are critical infrastructure, as well as diversify into these fields. It was just a couple years ago we did that program in Grambling for cybersecurity, and now it was the first one in the state, and we have a couple others at this point. So her appointment as chair is a great match at this time. In addition to everything else she has going on, just something else to add to her list. Congratulations, Dr. Reed, and we know you'll be a great asset, as you have been for us and remain for us, and will represent us extremely well. Thank you so much. So next we will vote on the committee reports and recommendations all together. However, if any board member wishes to take up any commission reports separately, please let me know and we can consider them individually. I didn't think anyone would want to do that. Okay, so hearing none, do I have a motion to approve all our committee recommendations? Regent Meir, all right. Motion, Regent David, second. Nglobo, what a great set of words. Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Nay? All right, ayes have it, motion passes. Thank you all. Next, we'll have Commissioner's report. Commissioner Reed, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. As the chairman has stated, we've had some busy times, and he talked about the role of chairman. So I had to lead off with this photo of him getting up at 5 a.m. to talk about dual enrollment, one of his favorite topics with the morning show. As you all know, we launched the dual enrollment portal at the Jumpstart Conference with 800 educators.
I want to interrupt. Y'all, don't be fooled by this picture. It was completely dark outside, okay? Right.
We did have some lighting to give you the effect, right? But I really appreciate our chair, Superintendent Brumley, and our staff for being there to talk about the portal. Malin Baker, who you heard from today, actually did the workshop to train the high school counselors on site. It was standing room only. And so just really appreciate the phenomenal work that is happening to advance dual enrollment in our state.
Commissioner, can we get Meg to make sure she has an extender for the reporters when they're interviewing Collis? I mean,
Slight height difference, but thank you for that. So that was fantastic, really excited about that. And then we had our LaSTEM conference at the River Center also. 500 STEM champions were there. Senator Hewitt, who, as you know, formed the LaSTEM movement in Louisiana, was one of the biggest advocates for us in the legislature, was there. certainly cannot say enough about the students and their robotic teams and the good work that they were doing. But again, a statewide effort to bring people together to focus on how do we advance STEM and cyber in our state. And so that was really great. And congratulations to our STEM director, Clint Coleman, and all of the staff who worked to make sure that this went off without a hitch. We also want to congratulate Southern University. They have been recently risen in the Carnegie classification and recognized as an R2 among American research universities. They're one of 2 HBCUs to receive the new Carnegie classification this year. And so we just want to applaud them. As you know, we were applauding, I think last month, UL Lafayette for their moving up as well. And so great things are happening at our institutions. We need to continue to advance our research agenda and try to make sure we're moving our state forward. So congratulations to Southern. And then good work from the comms team. You know, we've launched a podcast, Louisiana's Got Talent. Our chair was our lead podcast interview. And then this month we're going to be we have talked with President of Grambling, Rick Gallo, talking about cyber and computer science and diversifying these fields. And so we look forward to you hearing that launch on March 1st. And then we also, on the next slide, appreciate you focusing on our social media and talking about 2 things. Of course, the Black History Month campaign, highlighting Black history through the lens of higher education in Louisiana, but also our Love Teaching Week, as we try to ensure we're elevating the voices of educators and future teachers as we try to ensure we are lifting the profession and advocating for the profession as well. So thanks to the comms team, really good work, and thanks to the entire team for phenomenal work. Regents is blessed to have, as you all know, phenomenal talent, and so just really wanted to thank them for that. Also want to mention in the Love Teaching Week that Chair Temple talked about Mrs. Scott, his favorite teacher at University Lab. First grade? Second?
First grade.
First grade teacher. So you have to catch that video, and he talks about how much Mrs. Scott meant to him, and he said he has a photo of him leaning his head up against Mrs. Scott when he was in school. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was definitely the teacher's pet when it came to her. She was an amazing teacher.
No surprise there, Mr. Chair.
Right. So, any other public comments? Hearing none. Members, March 22nd, March 23rd, very, very excited about our next board meeting. And we have a lot more details to come, but it's going to be very, very, we're going to have a lot going on. So make sure you mark that on your calendars, make whatever adjustments you can to be here. Yes, sir, Regent Mayor.
I have 2 comments, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
First of all, I would like to let the Board of Regents members know that I did attend my first Louisiana Cancer Research Board meeting last month. I took Terrence Ginn's place on that board, and
Okay.
they're very thankful for the help and support of Board of Regents. They told me to say that to you guys, so I wanted to let everybody know that. And, you know, we often talk about, the other thing I want to talk about is, we always talk about regional cooperation amongst our universities, but I want to share with everyone that, you know, I was part of something that was sort of special recently, and it's going to be special on Tuesday. As many of you know, I'm very involved with the Zulu crew on Mardi Gras Day, and we've never had Grambling State University band to march in our parade. And so we've had Southern, in 19 we had LSU because our queen went to LSU. We've had Jackson State and other universities, but we never had Grambling. And the king this year is a Grambling graduate, and his wish list was to have Grambling march in front of his float. So around Bayou Classic time, I started getting involved, and we started raising money to get the band there. And they had a housing situation because many of the hotel rooms were gone. And I went to Suno's chancellor at the Bayou Classic and asked him, could we use his apartments on campus to house the band that one night, the day before the parade. And he was agreeable to it, and we started talking with President Gallo, and we made it happen. The band wound up not using Suno, but I just appreciated the cooperation. I wanted to acknowledge him publicly for showing that cooperation among those universities. So that's all I have to say.
That's phenomenal. I mean, and obviously just the collaboration and knowing we may not necessarily be at the same institution, but we're all in the same state. We all have a goal of educating our children and helping give them the best possible experience that that they can have. So I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you for adding those points. Is there any other business, Commissioner?
Since he mentioned Zulu, I think it is traditional that you send us your photo from the parade, so we'll be waiting to see
Well,
that.
I will have your coconuts at the next meeting. So
There we go. There we go. And I haven't heard it mentioned, and it probably is maybe somewhat off the subject, but our commissioner's daughter was I don't know how many queens, I mean, how many princesses do they have? I don't know if they just have one, but she was a princess at DC Mardi Gras, and there are pictures of that one. So it was great. It was great. So any other business to come before our board? Any other business? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So move. A second.
Second.
All right. Thank you all so much. Any discussion? She told me I'm gonna hit this. We're adjourned.